Welcome everyone. Let's begin our lesson for today by going over our learning goals and success criteria. First, what are we learning? We're learning how to write functions in multiple ways and recognize function notation, how to recognize patterns in functions to determine whether or not those functions are linear, how to recognize coordinates in terms of x values and y values, how to plot points on the coordinate plane, how to recognize patterns in the graphs of linear functions, how to determine how the slope and y-intercept will affect the graph of a linear function, how to find a function value of a linear function, how to find the slope and y-intercept of a function from an equation, how to take linear equations that are not written in slope-intercept form and convert them to slope-intercept form, how to graph linear functions using slope and y-intercept, how to manipulate the slope and y-intercept to change the steepness and location of a graph to suit the needs of the question, how to recognize practical applications of mathematics within your areas of interest, such as basketball, how to find the y-intercept of a linear function given the slope and a point on the line, and how to find the equation of a line given the slope and a point on a line. How are we learning it? Through the linear functions review notes and the linear functions review assignment, and the graphing linear functions part 3 notes and the graphing linear functions part 3 assignment. When can we use the information in this lesson? To recognize patterns in your spending so that you can figure out how to save money to buy a car, to determine the location of appliances, furniture, and walls when planning to remodel your house, to determine how long it would take to save up enough money for a down payment on a car, to calculate the amount of money in a savings account, to change the appearance of difficult tasks so it looks more like something you are used to seeing, such as changing your grocery list into a list based on the aisles where you will find the items, and to improve your ability to read between the lines and fill in gaps that are not given, such as putting together a bookcase with directions that are incomplete. How do you know you learned it? By getting a score of 4 on the linear functions review assignment and 4 on the graphing linear functions part 3 assignment. Now let's take a look at our agenda for today. We will begin by going over our learning goals and success criteria. While we do that, you'll fill out your Get It Started. Once you're done with your Get It Started, we'll go over it together and answer any questions that you may have. Then we'll do our weekly raffle. After that, we'll go over the notes on linear equations review and then fill out our linear equations review assignment. Once you're done with your assignment, we'll go over it together and answer any questions that you may have. With about 10 minutes left of class, we'll go over the graphing linear functions part 3 assignment that is on IXL. And then at the end of class, we'll go back over the learning goals and success criteria while you fill out your before you go. Your homework is to complete the graphing linear functions part 3 assignment and any incomplete assignments that you may have. Let's take a look now at the graphing linear functions part 3 notes. Our notes begin with our learning goals and success criteria. Now let's talk about slope. What is slope? Slope is a rate of change involving x values and y values. Slope is known as for being the change in the dependent variable over the change in the independent variable. Now what does that really mean? That really means that slope is the change in the y values over the change in the x values. So it's always y over x. And the next part you need to know is the y-intercept. The y-intercept is the point where the linear function crosses the y-axis. So we have a line here, and we can see that the y-axis goes here. So where do they intersect? Well, they intersect right there. That is what we call the y-intercept. So in this case, our y-intercept would be 2. Slope-intercept form. Slope-intercept form is written as y equals mx plus b. And what does that mean? M is the slope, and b is the y-intercept. Y and x are my variables that stay variables so that I can plug numbers in and see what they come out to be. So m is the slope and b is the y-intercept. Now how can I remember that? The easiest way I remember this is m represents the slope because it's a slippery slope to get hung up on your x. So think about it in terms of relationships. People that are involved in relationships and they break up, there's usually that one person in that relationship that's always hanging on to the relationship that's already dead. That's the slope. That's M. It's a slippery slope to get hung up on your ex. They are not together anymore. But the M is always trying to hang on. Notice how close they are. So M is trying to hang on, and it's a slippery slope to get hung up on your ex. Now B, on the other hand, is alone, not attached to anybody. B is lonely. And lonely people ask the questions, why am I alone? Why does no one want me? Why does no one think I'm cute? That's B. B is always asking the why questions. Those are the y-intercept questions. So that's the way I remember it. It's a slippery slope to get hung up on your x, and why am I alone? So that's the way I remember slope and y-intercept. Now, let's go ahead and pick out the slope and y-intercept from an equation. So we're given an equation, y equals 2x plus 4. And we want to know, what is the slope of that line? Well, we know that the slope is the one that's attached to its x, right? So it's a slippery slope to get hung up on your x. So the one that's attached to the x in this case is 2. So the slope is 2. The y-intercept is the lonely one. Why am I alone? Well, the lonely one is 4. So my y-intercept is 4. So that's how I pick out the slope and y-intercept given an equation. Let's look at another example. We have y equals negative 3 halves x minus 3. Well, same thing. It's a slippery slope to get hung up on your x. So the slope is the one that's attached to the x, which is negative 3 halves. So that's my slope. And my y-intercept is the lonely one. Well, the lonely one in this case is negative 3. So B is negative 3. So that's how I find the slope and y-intercept from an equation. Now, how do I graph a linear function? Well, first thing I need to do is pick out my slope and my y-intercept. Well, in this case, my slope is negative 1/2, because that's attached to the x. Now, my y-intercept, notice there's nothing here. There's no lonely people. So how do I say none in math terms? Well, that's 0. So my y-intercept is 0. So now when I graph this, the first step is I plot the y-intercept. Well, my y-intercept is 0. So I'm going to go along my y-axis and find 0, which is right here. And I plot my point. The next step is I'm going to use the slope to plot my second point. Remember, this is change in y over change in x, or you might have heard it in the past as rise over run. We're going to talk about it as change in y over change in x. So my change in y is negative 1. So I go down 1. And my change in x is 2, so I'm going to go to the right, 1, 2, and plot my point. So now I have my first 2 points. The next step is just to connect the dots and draw a line between them. So I'm going to connect the dots, and now I have a linear function that is graphed that goes through 0 and has a slope of negative 1/2. Now, what if I'm given 2 points and asked to find the slope? Well, first thing we need to remember is that coordinates are written in the form x and y, right? So the x goes first and the y goes second. And that slope is the change in the y over the change in the x. So what we're going to do is we're going to take these points and we're going to subtract the y values and put that as my numerator, and subtract the x values and put that as my denominator. So when I do that, I get 1 minus 2. Those are my y's, so that's my change in y. So my change in y is 1 minus 2. And my change in x is 2 minus 4. So that's change in y over change in x. Now when I do that, 1 minus 2 is negative 1. And 2 minus 4 is negative 2. And when I do that, a negative divided by a negative just becomes a positive. So this is just 1/2. So my slope for that line that goes through those 2 points is 1/2. Let's look at another example. So what is the slope of the line that passes through negative 3, and 2, negative 6? Again, coordinates are written as x and y. So this is my x, this is my y, this is my x, this is my y. And slope is change in y over change in x. So I'm going to calculate that by subtracting my y values first. So negative 3 minus negative 6. And then I'm going to subtract my x values, which is negative 3 minus 2. So I get negative 3 minus negative 6 and negative 3 minus 2. And when I simplify, this really becomes plus positive. So negative 3 plus 6 is 3. And negative 3 minus 2 is negative 5. So it's 3 over negative 5, which is just negative 3/5. There's a video here also that shows you how to graph linear functions in Desmos, so you can go ahead and watch that. Let's talk now about how to check our work with linear equations using Desmos. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to desmos.com, just like this, and we're going to click on the link that says Graphing Calculator. And over here on the left side, we can enter the equation of any linear equation and it will graph it for us. So let's try y equals 2x minus 4. Well, as we can see, it graphs it for us. We can check that against whatever we did on our assignment now. And you can do it this way. Let's say we had an equation, though, that wasn't in slope-intercept form. We can still graph that on here and check our work. So let's say it was 4x minus 2y is equal to 8. And we can see that that's actually the same as this one. But we can look at this and check our work this way as well. It still graphed the equation in slope-intercept form, even though the equation we put in is not in slope-intercept form. So this is one way that you can check your work using Desmos to find linear equations. Let's talk now about how to access your assignments on IXL using SBLink. So what you'll do is you'll click on the link that takes you to your SBLink, which should look like this, and you're going to log in the same way you would log into your computer. So the first part for your username is going to be the first part of your email address without the @sbcusd.ca.us. So it should be your last name, first initial, middle initial, and then the last 4 of your student ID. Then for your password, it's the same password you use to log into your Chromebook. From there, you'll go ahead and click Sign In. And it should take you to a page that looks kind of like this. You're going to go find the link that says IXL, which is right here. And I'm going to go ahead and click on that link. And it should take me to the IXL login page. So it should look like this. At the top right corner, it should say welcome and then your name. If it does not say your name, then you're not logged in and you won't receive credit for your work. As long as this is good, you can go ahead and close that tab out. And then you can go to your Google Classroom. And then you'll go and find the activity, which is here. And I'm going to click on the IXL link right here. And this will take me to the assignment that I need to complete. So that's how you log into your assignments on IXL using SBLink. Let's take a look now at the Graphing Linear Functions Part 3 assignment. Notice our assignment begins with our learning goals and success criteria. If we scroll down, it tells us to click on this link to log into SBLink and then access our IXL. Once you do that, it should take you to a page that looks like this.